Good day everyone, this is Belina Morake, still busy with standard costing. This time we are going to be looking at the sales variances. So we are still busy with our example 11.1. We're only going to be looking at the sales. So as per the question, the standard selling price is 88 rand. According to the budgeted income statement, we budgeted to sell 8,000 units at 88 rand. And our budgeted sales came to 704,000. And then going to there, we actually sold 9,000 units at 92 rand, and the sales value came to 828,000. So talking about the sales variance, what does this mean? The total sales variance is split into two, where we're going to have our sales price variance and the sales volume variance. The sales volume variance can also be split into further the sales mix variance and the sales quantity variance. The sales mix variance and the sales quantity variance will be similar to the material mix when we're doing the material mix and the material quantity. The sales price variance reflects the effect that a change in revenue caused by the actual selling price differing from the standard selling price will have on the profit. The sales volume variance reflects the effect on contribution or profit of budgeted volume of sales rather than sales value or price. In a marginal costing system, the sales volume variance is calculated as the difference between the actual and budgeted sales volume multiplied by the standard contribution margin per unit. That is the selling price per unit less total variable cost per unit. In absorption costing, the sales volume variance is calculated as the difference between the actual and budgeted sales volume multiplied by the standard gross profit per unit. That is the selling price less total unit manufacturing cost. In example 11.1, information given, we need the formula to calculate our sales price variance. Remember guys, there's a difference between the absorption costing and the standard costing. So we are first going to be looking into the absorption costing. So the formula will then say for the sales price variance, actual price minus standard price multiplied by actual value or actual units sold. So actually we sold a unit at 92 rand when we had budgeted to sell the units at 88 rand. We sold a total of 9,000 units. So we'll then say 92 rand minus 88 rand multiplied by 9,000, and that will give us a variance of 36,000. Remember now we are looking into the sales. So if the sales variance, it is good that our actually is more than our standard. So because we've sold more than what we had budgeted for, that is why we have a favorable variance. And then if we have to do the sales volume variance, we'll then say actual units minus budgeted units multiplied by the standard marginal cost. Remember in absorption costing, we'll then say sales minus all the variable cost as well as the fixed cost. So we say we wanted to sell 9,000 units, we budgeted to sell 8,000. Our selling price as the budgeted information is 88 rand. Total production cost or standard cost is 77 rand. Bear in mind that the 77 rand includes both the fixed as well as the variable cost. So we can then say 9,000 minus 8,000, which will then give us 1,000, and then 88 rand minus 77 rand, which will give us a standard cost profit of 11 rand multiplied by 1,000. That will give us a variance of 11,000. The variance is favorable because we only budgeted to sell 8,000 units, but we ended up selling 9,000 units, which means more money is coming to our profit. And then the total sales variance, it will be our actual sales minus our budgeted sales. So it will be the 9,000 multiply the 92 rand. Now it is our actual selling price minus the 77 Rand, which is what is our standard cost per unit based on the standard information, minus the 8,000, which is the budgeted units, multiplied by the budgeted selling price of 88 Rand, minus the standard cost per unit of 77 Rand. So then we can say 92 Rand minus 77 Rand, that will give you 15 Rand, that you multiply it with the 9,000 units that were sold, and that will give you 135. Then you can say 88 Rand minus 77 Rand, that will give you 11 Rand multiplied by the 8,000, and that will give you the 88. Then you can then say the actual sales value minus the budgeted sales value, and that will give you a variance of 47,000, which is favorable. It is favorable because we have received more than what we had budgeted for. So remember, the sales is an income, so the variance of an income is the opposite of the variance of the cost. The very same variances, the sales price, sales volume, the sales variance, but now looking into a marginal costing system. Remember, in the marginal costing system, we'll then say selling price minus our variable manufacturing cost. So for the sales price variance, we'll then say actual price minus the standard price multiplied by the actual volume. So the price actually sold was 92 Rand. When we budgeted 88 Rand, we actually sold 9,000, and that will still give us a variance of 36,000, which is favorable. When we go to the sales volume variance, we actually sold 9,000 units when we had budgeted to sell 8,000 units, multiplied by the standard contribution, which will now say selling price budgeted 88 Rand minus all the variable cost. The variable cost meaning we adding the 15 Rand of direct material, 20 Rand for wood and willow, and also going to add the 24 Rand of labor, adding also the 6 Rand of our variable manufacturing overheads. So in this instance, we leave out the fixed manufacturing overheads because it will be treated as a period cost or as an expense. So that is why we're now minusing the 65 Rand. Then you can then say 88 Rand minus 65 to get your variable contribution and multiply by the difference in units, which is 1,000. That will then give you a variance of 23,000, which is favorable because we have sold more than what we had budgeted for. For the sales variance total, it will then be the 9,000 units multiplied by 92 Rand, which is our sales, minus our total variable manufacturing cost, which is 65 Rand. And the 8,000 multiplied by 88 Rand minus again our variable manufacturing cost. And that will leave us with a variance of 59,500, which will be favorable. Why? Because we managed to sell more than what we had budgeted for. So what does this tell us about the sales variance? That when the organization has multiple products with different profit margin, then the sales volume variance can be divided into the sales mix and the sales quantity. The sales mix variance measures the effect of the difference between the actual sales mix and the budgeted sales mix on profit. The sales quantity variance measures the effect of change in volume on profit. These variances can be calculated using the contribution per unit or the profit per unit. And then we have example 11.3. In this instance, now we have more than one product that we are selling. So in 11.3, we are selling Sunlight, we are selling Savlon, we are also selling Dettol. We've got different units for each of those, and the sales value, the selling price per unit, the cost per unit, the contribution per unit, as well as the total margin. And the actual sales were given, how many were sold for Sunlight, Savlon, as well as Dettol. The sales value for all of them, the selling price, the cost price, the contribution margin, as well as the total margin. So with this information, now we are going to try to calculate our sales mix. So the sales mix variance, we need the formula, which is actual units sold minus actual units sold at standard mix multiplied by the standard margin. So the sunlight actual units that were sold is 520 minus the 900, which is the total of the 520 of sunlight, 290 of Savlon, as well as 94 Dettol, multiplied by the 6/10. The 6/10, guys, we work out the ratio as we did with regards to our material mix. We will then check for the sunlight how many units needs to be sold, and then for Savlon how many units needs to be sold, as well as for Dettol how many needs to be sold. So for sunlight it's 6, for Savlon it's 3, and then for Dettol it will be 1. So for sunlight we'll then say 520 minus 900 multiplied by 6/10 multiplied by 1, which will then give us a variance of 20, which is unfavorable. For the Savlon, it will be 290 units that were sold minus the total 900. The ratio of that, we're supposed to sell 3/10 to get our ratio, and then multiply by the standard price, which is 150, and that will give us a variance of 30. Then for Dettol, 90 units were sold minus 900 multiplied by 1/10, multiplied by 250, and that will give us a variance of 0. 0, remember, it means that there is no variance. So what we had budgeted and what we had actually sold is equal. So that is why we have 0. So the total there, it will be a 20 unfavorable plus a 30 favorable, which will then give us the sales volume mix variance of 10, which is favorable. And then for the sales volume quantity variance, the formula will be actual units sold at standard mix minus budgeted quantity multiplied by the standard margin. So the sunlight, it will be 900 from what we have used in the sales mix multiplied by 6/10 minus, now we need our budgeted units. So we are going to use the units that we had budgeted. So we'll take it from the budgeted information, and that will multiply by the standard margin of 1 rand. That will then give us a variance of 60, which is unfavorable. Unfavorable because we compare what we actually sold against what we were supposed to sell. So we budgeted to sell 600, but we only sold 540, which is not good because it means lesser profit. And then for the Savlon, the same as from the above in the mix, 900 multiplied by 3 divided by 10. We budgeted to sell 300 units, so we have a variance that says 270. What actually happened compared to what we budgeted, which is 300, multiplied by the 150, and that will give us a variance of 45, which again is unfavorable. We budgeted to sell 300, we only sold 270, so that is going to affect our profit negatively. Dettol again, it's 900 multiplied by 1/10. We budgeted to sell 100 units, so it will be 100 minus the 90 that was actually sold, and that will give us a variance of 25. Again, it is unfavorable because we budgeted to sell 100, we only sold 90. So when we add all the variance, all of them are unfavorable. That means it will be 60 plus 45 plus 25 will give us a total of 130, which is unfavorable. So the sales volume variance will then say standard quantity minus actual quantity used multiplied by the standard price. So for sunlight, standard quantity or budgeted, it's 600. Actually, we sold 520 multiplied by the rate, which is 1 rand, will give us a variance of 80 rand. Savlon, standard, we budgeted 300. We actually sold 290 multiplied by 150 will give us 15 rand unfavorable. And Dettol, we budgeted 100, we only sold 90, multiplied by 250 as the standard price will give us a variance of 25, which is unfavorable. So the sales volume variance, we add everything to get there, 120, which is also unfavorable. And remember, by separating the sales volume variance into sales mix and sales quantity, we can see how the sales volume variance is affected by a shift in total volume of sales and a shift in relative mix of product. The sales quantity variance indicates that if the original planned sales mix had been maintained, then the actual sales volume of 900 profit will have been decreased by 120. The favorable sales mix variance has arisen because of increase in percentage sold of Savlon, which has a higher contribution than Sunlight, and a decrease in percentage of Sunlight, as adverse mix variance will occur whenever there is an increase in percentage sold of units with lower contribution, a decrease in percentage of units sold with higher contribution. What does the sales variance tells us? Causes of sales variance: a reduction in the price during promotion, market condition focusing on change in price within the industry, lower price given due to bulk buying. Causes of the sales volume variance: increase or decrease in sales volume due to successful or unsuccessful marketing, unexpected change in customer demand, change in selling price, as well as losing customers due to failure to satisfy their demand. Thank you. This is where we are ending.